June 25, 2021, Derek Chauvin, a cop from Minneapolis, was sentenced for the murder of George Floyd, but karma came about 2 years later as he got brutally stabbed over 22 times. Now, he may have survived that attack, but not everybody's that lucky. This is what happens when cops land themselves in prison. Derek Chauvin.
Breaking story overnight, Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd, attacked in a federal prison, and he was seriously injured.
May 25, 2020, George Floyd, a 46-year-old African-American, was arrested and killed by Minneapolis police officers after a report of a counterfeit $20 bill was made, and the officer to blame, Mr. Derek here, the white police officer who became the reason for a global revolution. Born on March 19, 1976 in Oakdale, Minnesota, Chauvin grew up as an average American. He had a formal education before joining the police department, and in his career, he had 18 complaints against him on official record and was involved in 3 police shootings, one of which was fatal. He also received 2 letters of reprimand for misconduct, as well as 2 medals of valor and 2 commendation medals during his career. On May 25, 2020, Chauvin was one of 4 officers involved in arresting George Floyd on suspicion of using that counterfeit $20 bill at a supermarket, and was also field training one of the other officers involved. CCTV would show a nearby shop with Floyd not resisting arrest. Based on body cam footage recovered, Floyd was seen repeatedly saying the words that would eventually stick to the hearts of millions across the globe.
"I can't breathe. Please help me."
The incident got out of control, and Chauvin continued to kneel on his neck for over 9 minutes. Floyd pled for his life before he passed away without committing a single crime. Obviously, this sparked outrage, prompting some kind of action by U.S. authorities. Chauvin and the other 3 involved, Thomas Lane, J. Alexander Quang, and Tu Thao, were fired. At the same time, protests erupted globally, demanding justice for Floyd. March 8, 2021, Chauvin's trial commenced, and he was initially charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. The charges were later upgraded to second-degree unintentional murder and second-degree manslaughter. The legal process had begun, but the wounds inflicted on the community were deep and searing. The prosecution argued that Chauvin's actions were a blatant violation of police protocol and directly led to Floyd's death. We had witnesses, including bystanders and medical experts, providing damning testimony about the unnecessary and lethal force applied. And I mean, if you really think about it, you may begin to wonder why Chauvin felt the need to kneel on his neck just to get him handcuffed. But anyway, the defense contended that Chauvin's actions were a result of his training, and that Floyd's death was caused by factors beyond the officer's control, including pre-existing health conditions and drug use. And as for Chauvin himself, he chose not to testify. April 20th, 2021. After deliberating for over just 10 hours, the jury rendered a unanimous verdict. Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all charges. It's pretty rare when you see cops held accountable. The world awaited for the sentencing. His actions had become a symbol of systemic issues within law enforcement, and a month later, the judge gave him 22.5 years in prison, a sentence met with mixed reactions. Some believed it was a step towards justice, while others argued it fell short of the severity of the crime. Following the 2021 conviction for the murder of Floyd, the state of Minnesota made a crucial decision regarding the incarceration of Chauvin. Due to his requirement for segregation and the pre-existence of a suitable unit, authorities opted to keep him at the Oak Park Heights facility. Now, this place is categorized as administrative control. It prioritizes inmate protection rather than punitive measures. The decision to put him here was part of a broader strategy to ensure the safety and well-being of high-profile inmates. These facilities implement rigorous security measures, including regular mental health evaluations and frequent checks by guards, who check on inmates every half an hour. Now, Derek's cell is 10 by 10 feet, featuring white cinder block walls, a metal toilet and sink, and narrow windows. While the conditions adhere to a controlled environment, Chauvin was granted some allowances. He's permitted an hour of solitary exercise each day, and could have up to 3 non-contact visits per week. However, as relaxed as those measures might sound, After some months there, Derek was taken to another facility, the FCI Tucson prison, where he was expected to serve the rest of his concurrent state and federal sentences. And the only problem was that as soon as Chauvin walked into this place, he had a giant target on him. A lot of the people here he put there. Also, we had a lot of African Americans in here who heard about his contribution to Floyd and were seeking reparations. And soon enough, the opportunity came. On May 25, 2020, during sports time, an argument ensued between Derek and this other inmate named John Tursak. It quickly escalated into a fight, and authorities came to break him up. But it wouldn't end there for Chauvin. Tursak took his shiv, went into his cell, and brutally stabbed him 22 times. Prison employees rushed in to help administer first aid and control his vitals. He was rushed to the hospital for further evaluation and treatment. Now, before the assault, Chauvin's lawyer had told him to keep him away from other inmates for his protection. The stabbing here was compared to the July 2023 prison assault on Larry Nassar, and it raised further scrutiny of inmate safety in the federal prison system. Keith Ellison, Attorney General of Minnesota, denounced the attack. In a statement, he said,
Chauvin was duly convicted of his crimes, and like any incarcerated individual, he should be able to serve his sentence without fear of retaliation or violence.
Federal prosecutors charged 52-year-old John Tursak with attempted murder, assault with intent to commit murder, assault with a dangerous weapon, and assault resulting in serious bodily injury. According to court documents, the suspect told the feds that he attacked Chauvin because he was a high-profile inmate and as a symbolic connection to the BLM movement, with the attack occurring on Black Friday, along with other references to the Mexican Mafia. 2022, Chauvin pled guilty to the federal charges related to violation of Floyd's civil rights and the rights of a boy whom he earlier assaulted in a similar manner. The plea resulted in an additional 21 years to be served concurrently with his previous state conviction. Interestingly, as part of a federal plea agreement, Chauvin expressed a preference for federal incarceration over serving time in a Minnesota state prison. This preference for federal confinement, while uncommon, has legal implications that extend Chauvin's time behind bars. The deal specifies a minimum of 20 years in federal prison, 5 years longer than the 15-year minimum he would have faced in a state prison. Legal experts, including Nima Rahmani, suggest that the perceived safety and better management of federal prisons compared to state facilities may have influenced Derek's decision. Overcrowding in state prisons is also a potential factor. In this interview, Rahmani elaborated, stating,
There are many reasons for that. They're just managed better by the Bureau of Prisons, where state and local jails just are not.
So, we see that he would rather take on another 5 years than lose his life a lot sooner. As of the latest information available, Chauvin's state conviction is under appeal. The legal proceedings surrounding his case continue to be closely monitored, shaping public discourse on accountability, justice, and the broader issues of police conduct and systemic reform. The outcome of the appeal will play a crucial role in determining the final chapter of this deeply impactful and controversial case. Manuel Paro. December 11, 2012. Police officer turned serial killer was executed in Florida by lethal injection. And this man was solely involved in the death of 9 people, yet he saw nothing wrong with what he did. In fact, in his argument in court, he claimed,
I am a soldier. I accomplished my mission, and I humbly ask you to give me the glory of ending my life and not send me to spend the rest of my days in state prison.
The year 1986 bore witness to a reign of terror orchestrated by the man named Manuel Paro. Once a guardian of justice, he devolved into this merciless killer, singling out individuals he deemed undesirable, primarily drug dealers. Paro's gruesome spree claimed the lives of 9 victims, while their deaths were a stark departure from the duty he had sworn to uphold. Born September 24, 1956, in New York, Manuel was a former Boy Scout and Marine Corps veteran. He began his law enforcement career with the Florida Highway Patrol, graduating as a valedictorian from the academy. However, he was fired from that agency in 1979 for falsifying traffic tickets. Manuel was soon hired by the police department in Sweetwater, Florida, located in Miami-Dade County. But the story wasn't much different, and in only 1 year, he had caused a lot of damage already. Here are some of his victims. Carmen Marie Rodriguez. Mario Amador, Roberto Alfonso, Luis Robledo, and Ulpiano Ledo. As Pardo's crimes sent shockwaves through the communities, law enforcement agencies would mobilize to apprehend him. They had a hard time catching him because of his background as a police officer. He just knew tactics and procedures that made him a formidable adversary. However, he would leave a trail of clues that skilled investigators were able to pick up on, and a couple of months of playing this game of cat and mouse, law enforcement had finally honed in on Pardo's whereabouts. They found him in a New York City hospital where he had a gunshot wound to his foot. The bullet had matched those found in his final victims, and according to reports, the injury occurred during the murder of Ricard. After shooting this woman once, Pardo's Ruger pistol got jammed. He then bludgeoned Ricard with the handgun, causing the jammed round to discharge into Pardo's foot. When police would search his house, they discovered a collection of Nazi memorabilia. And at his trial, prosecutors showed he had an admiration for Adolf here and expressed racist sympathies against Jews and blacks. 1988, Pardo faced the consequences of his evil actions. The judge, taking into account the severity and nature of the crimes, gave him death, and the man who was once entrusted with upholding the law now faced the ultimate punishment for betraying the very principles he had vowed to protect. September 3, 1986, former police officer Pardo had to face immediate hostility from his now fellow inmates. The prison guards even hated him too. And if death row wasn't hard enough for him, he would continually face threats from both inmates and some of the guards. The weight of Pardo's crimes, coupled with the isolation and looming threat of execution, took a toll on his mental health. According to reports, he had numerous schizophrenic episodes. He would be seen on numerous occasions talking to himself and trying to hurt people around him. Manuel Paro Jr. spent a total of 26 long years on death row before his execution on December 11, 2012. His journey as a cop to condemned criminal reached its chilling conclusion. The society that had once entrusted him with upholding justice ended up witnessing the system exacting the ultimate punishment for his transgressions. Wayne Couzens.
Wayne Couzens will spend the rest of his life behind bars. He will not see the light of day again.
March 3, 2021. Marked the beginning of a harrowing saga that would grip the nation. Sarah Everard, a 33-year-old marketing executive, went missing while walking home in South London. The subsequent investigation led authorities to Wayne Couzens, a Metro officer who ironically was entrusted with upholding the law. For context, Sarah was marketing for a digital media agency, and on that day she was just on her way home from work when she ran into this officer in the Brixton Hill area. Now, this man would disturbingly use handcuffs to force Sarah into his vehicle, marking the beginning of her nightmarish encounter. From there, he would take her to this isolated location, where he perpetrated depraved sexual acts on her. He subjected her to rape and strangulation, callously disposing her remains by burning her body and discarding the remnants in a nearby pond. In the aftermath, a wave of public sorrow and indignation swept across the country. Vigils were organized for Sarah, with a particular focus on Clapham Common, near the location of her disappearance. And as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the perpetrator was none other than Wayne Couzens. And when details emerged about the sinister sequence of events on the night of Sarah's abduction, Couzens' troubled background came to light. It was revealed that Couzens, who had joined the Metro PD from the Civil Nuclear Constabulary in 2018, had not undergone rigorous vetting or even completed the mandatory probation period before being assigned to the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Branch. Subsequently, the dark mission that unfolded that night was meticulously tracked through CCTV and ANPR technology, leading him straight to Couzens. Now, he secured a white Vauxhall car from a Dover rental agency, embarking on a 12-hour shift at the U.S. Embassy in London before initiating this sinister plan. Surveillance cams captured his movements as he followed and eventually intercepted Sarah, masquerading as a police officer when he was just a mere constable. And when he knew he was on the verge of being caught, he attempted to run away by reporting himself as unwell. However, by this time, the investigative team already linked him to the murder. He was forced to surrender his police equipment, including his belt and handcuffs. After this, he was arrested initially on suspicion of kidnapping and later on suspicion of murder. During interrogations, he initially denied recognizing Sarah, but later fabricated a narrative involving financial problems and alleged threats from Eastern Europeans. And we know this doesn't make sense, but those were Cousins' words. The mounting evidence led to his conviction on charges of kidnapping and murder. The case of Sarah and Wayne laid bare a significant breach of trust within law enforcement and would spark a nationwide dialogue about women's safety and the accountability of those tasked with upholding the law. And now how'd they take care of this guy in prison? Well, be ready for a shocker. This guy would face a hell of a time, surrounded by fellow whole tariff lifers, a group that included those convicted of taking the lives of police officers. His journey began at HMP Belmarsh for evaluation before entering the dispersal system, a network of 5 high-security prisons across the UK where there's no escape from the country's most infamous criminals. Former armed robber turned prison magazine editor Noel Smith shed light on what Cousins could expect during his incarceration. According to Smith, he would anticipate it being an ongoing nightmare. Cousins became part of a select group, numbering fewer than 60 whole tariff lifers in the UK, some of whom committed acts of violence against law enforcement. Due to their limited numbers, keeping them separated posed challenges, ensuring Cousins would regularly interact with them. As a former cop with a whole life tariff, Cousins was privy to the treatment meted out to law enforcement in prison. There was a belief that if he were placed in a regular prison, he would confront daily threats. However, in a bid to safeguard himself, he opted to spend the majority of his days within the confines of his cell, minimizing contact with other inmates, especially during the initial 5 or 6 years. Top security prisons operate under different dynamics, offering no assurances of personal safety. Cousins found himself hospitalized twice due to head injuries sustained while incarcerated, and he remained under suicide watch until his final day. They would note his suicidal tendencies, with him often keeping his head down and exhibiting visible distress during court appearances. In the prison where Cousins resided, his cell remained under constant surveillance. They built these cells with suicides and escape attempts in mind, and you had personnel checking on him every 15 minutes throughout the night. People who commit offenses like Cousins over here are subjected to hard times in prison. Now, among his fellow inmates were notorious individuals like Michael Adebolajo, who was involved in Fusilier Lee Rigsby's tragic end, Mark Bridger, neo-Nazi Thomas Mayer, grinder serial killer Stephen Port, even the terrorist Caris Adela, responsible for the deaths of 3 men in Reading, Berkshire. Cousins is now destined to spend the remainder of his life in prison, serving as a constant reminder for what he did to Sarah. His notoriety will forever be associated with the disdain he earned for his actions. Gerald John Schaefer.
Catholic schools, I found out, that are so repressive that they just have to feel as though that they've been forced into it and can't say.
December 22, 1972, 2 girls, Georgia Jessup and Susan Place, reportedly disappeared from their home. Then Gerald Schaefer, a former sheriff's deputy, would almost be linked to the disappearance with multiple shreds of evidence, in turn having the case spread like wildfire. Born in 1946, Schaefer's early years were far from serene, with dark shadows of a troubled childhood. This set the stage for him, a journey from law enforcer to convicted murderer. Even though growing up poor, he would manage to earn a living for himself and his family, first as a teacher and then as a police officer. July 21, 1972, Schaefer encountered 2 teens, Nancy Ellen Trotter and Paula Sue Wells, while on duty. He drove the pair to their intended destination, and upon finding out that neither of them were from Florida and that they were both traveling the following day, Schaefer proposed to drive them to their location, so the girls would accept his offer and agree to meet him at a specific place. The following morning, Schaefer arrived at that location. The only problem was that he wasn't wearing his uniform and he was driving his personal vehicle. The girls, not caring about this, entered that vehicle, but shortly after they did, he killed him. As crazy as that sounds, there's more. After the tragic incident, Schaefer would then set his eyes on Georgia Jessup and Susan Place and attempted to abduct them. But lucky for them, they managed to orchestrate a harrowing escape, narrowly avoiding becoming victims of his dark intentions. What they didn't know was that their testimony would later play a crucial role in this unfolding drama leading to his arrest and prosecution. The courtroom became a battleground, where prosecutors laid out the gruesome details of his crimes. Consequently, the jury gave their verdict after more than 2 years of trial. He was found guilty, but before he was sent off, the judge uttered these words as he read out his closing remarks.
It's beyond the court's imagination to conceive how you were such a foolish and astronomic jackass as you were in this case.
Life in prison became Schaefer's new reality, with his past catching up with him in the most damning of ways. Prison life wasn't a walk in the park for him. No longer a cop, but a prisoner. He faced a harsh reality of isolation, hostility, and constant fear of payback. The prison walls meant to fix people would become his reminder of the consequences of what he did. Convicted for his crimes against women, he was a target for fellow inmates seeking their twisted version of justice. Hostility was all around. Nobody was going to forgive him in here. Beyond the physical challenges, Schaefer was grappling with a heavy emotional burden as well. We have guilt, remorse, the constant fear of his safety, once enforcing the law and now haunted by a dark past. In 1995, Schaefer's story took a final turn. He was found dead in his cell. It was pretty puzzling. Could it have been a vendetta by other inmates seeking revenge? Or how about just to silence somebody who knew too much? This will forever be shrouded in mystery, leaving everyone wondering how the twisted saga of Gerald John Schaefer truly concluded. Without even watching this video, we can probably figure out what happens to cops when they go to prison. From cops to convicts though, one little push can make somebody act out their true intention, leaving us questioning the thin line between those who enforce the law and those who break it.